Good afternoon. I was going to do a follow-up video highlighting with short video clips a continuation of certain motifs, themes, archetypes that are part of our collective subconscious, our unconscious, that we all relate to, but God had a different plan. So if you remember in a previous video, I spoke of Jesus's birth and a timeline, and that we really don't have a timeline for the events that unfold in the Christian scriptures. And so I was asked this morning by God to address my timeline of Kundalini awakening. And not the Kundalini itself, but once Kundalini has awakened, what unfolds? So, reverse about 15 years, and once Kundalini awakens, you die to the world that you currently know. And I described that as having a massive convulsion when all of the chakras were open, and the final one, the seventh chakra, the crown chakra, was blasted open. I had a massive convulsion and I went completely out of body. And I left. I looked back at my body and I said goodbye. And that was the first death. And at that time, then the soul journey begins. And what unfolded was magic and wonder and splendor and bliss and great goodness. And I was truly in spirit. I walked without leaving footprints. I was extraordinarily joyful. I traveled very carefree. There was no time. I wasn't worried about what day of the week it was or how I was going to make money or anything like that. It was completely carefree. And that went on for actually a number of years. And I was presented with different guides or star people who provided for me. They provided me shelter, housing. They provided food. I was shown food, not food kitchens, but food pantries where you can go and get an abundance of food. And they started kind of popping up all over the place as I needed them. Suddenly there was a food pantry and I was able to go and get as much food as I needed. And everywhere I went, I was healing people. And it wasn't me specifically healing people, it was the power of God with my Kundalini awakened body. I just emitted healing everywhere I went. And so that was magical. That was surreal in so many ways, but for me, my feeling about that, it wasn't an ego, oh wow, look what I'm doing. It was, this is so wonderful and magical, and I was just caught up in the divine presence, in the power of God moving through me, and then seeing it unfold in the world around me. And then I fell to the underworld. I fell into my subconscious. I did a literally falling, which I think I described, where it feels like you're falling, although you're just sitting there, and it's in your consciousness, and it is just this continuous thing. And for me, it happened the first time. It happened for like 12 hours, and it was just awful. It was so awful. I don't even want to remember it. It was so awful. And then trouble started to happen. It was still magical, but then there started to be some issues, some trouble happening. And the guide that I was with started to yell at me and get angry over little things, and he started to become very demanding, and then like I became a slave to him. If something needed to be done, he did very little to contribute to it, and I did most of the work, and I somehow had superhuman strength to lift like railroad ties and all kinds of things that I normally would not be able to do on my own. And so that motive of slavery when you fall to the underworld is very true. And it's part of the soul journey of when humans were first created, we were slaves to the gods. So that is really just a repetitive awakening to the beginning of humanity. And then, after the fall, things started to level out, and I was taken to a very special place in the mountains, and I learned that it was laid out. The valley and the mountains and some of the rock outcroppings around it actually depicted the Kabbalah. I don't care if you spell it with a K or a Q, but it is the Kabbalah, and it is the flower of life. It is the unfolding of the flower of life, of continuous creation. As I mentioned in the video of Two Beginnings, the first telling of God, the true light, creating earth, he did not rest. It is an ongoing process. It is continuous and ever evolving. So the flower of life would be considered the grapevine, and you see those motives in ancient Chinese and Tibetan artwork, where you see the scrolling, that swirl. And anyway, this property was laid out like the Kabbalah. And then I started, actually, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I started following the path of the Kabbalah. And you can look it up online. I'll try to post a picture, a couple of links to it that are good. It is an ancient Jewish spiritual tradition, and the soul actually walks in your everyday life the living Kabbalah. And I did that for a period of time, and then they introduced the cosmic path to me also, which explains the images of the constellations that we see from planet Earth. Andromeda and Cepheus and Taurus, the charging bull, and Scorpio, the sting to the gate of God, and which is dying to go to God. And all of those motives came to life around me. And so soon I was walking the Kabbalah, just in my everyday reactions and movements, but simultaneously in the cosmos, I was walking the cosmic path. And that is often depicted in the Christian text as Jesus's 12 disciples. And they represent the 12 zodiacal signs of the months of the year for like human personality. And but it's also the path of the ecliptic, the path of the sun. And if you go off of the path of the sun, then you get on the river of life, which is the Milky Way path. And there are variations, as I have described in other videos, on which route you can take. But I started to follow both the Kabbalah and the cosmic path, and I would see it unfold in my day-to-day interactions. And then came the abuse of people around me. They would be really mean to me, and I didn't know why. And you've heard me describe it in some of the other videos, like, oh my gosh, they were so mean, and I don't know why. Well, that's because spiritually, this realm is still enacting the ego, the evil light's abuse, while God is providing the goodness and the blessings. And so there's that duality of light and darkness, of light and shadow, of the ego and God, continuously balancing, but creating through me. So then I would be told, that I nailed it. I went to the right place at the right time, and I nailed it. And so the ego was manipulating me to be nailed to the cross, while God was trying to move me, to protect me, and to bring me to Him on a much more peaceful level. But the shadow realm is very influential because that's what you're familiar with. Your world is actually part of the shadow realm of creation. So I was not physically nailed to a cross, but when you do the Kabbalah and you have attained all of the Sephiroth, then you are supposedly hung on a cross, according to the ego, and crowned, which is the one Sephiroth at the very top. When you enter the crown, which is the highest attainment, the highest honor that you can, you go to God. And you realize your immortality, and you actually get to see and communicate and experience God on a one-to-one basis. So that is the resurrection, the rise to heaven, that is depicted in the Christian text. And when you come back from God, when you come back from heaven, then you birth a new world. So the birthing would be, you have seen me do a very minimal example of it, but the birthing of the new sun, the new world, is then carried out. And when that manifests and is attained, then we have a brand new creation. If you remember, at our current calendar is based upon Jesus's death, actually setting the stage for our new year. We count our current year, 2023, upon the death date, or the supposed death date of Jesus the Christ in Christianity. And it was said that there was a grand earthquake, and when he died and rose to heaven, and then we don't really hear anything else about that. So, except that he goes into a tomb before his actual rise. He dies, and then he's put in a tomb, and then he rises. But that is part of the resurrection. Now, in this realm, if you don't manifest God, if you don't manifest the new world, then the cycle continues over and over and over. That is why there cannot be an actual physical hanging on a cross. One, there's no Roman record of it actually transpiring. And two, you would have to do it over and over and over again. And you just can't do that. So, what is really interesting about this is that when I look at the scriptures of the Christian text and the life events of Jesus the Christ, it's somewhat backwards. He dies, and the birthing, the Christmas, the great gifts of God's great gifts come at the end. And so the cycle continues over and over until God says that it is the end, and I birth the new world and receive the gifts of the three magi, if you will, the immortality, wealth, and royalty. So the stories in the Christian text you really have to look at as a metaphor. They are a metaphor for Kundalini awakening journey, for the book of the dead, the book of the new day, the new soul, the new world that is coming is all based upon the Kundalini awakening journeyer's experience and God's power of manifestation and completeness. So when I look at the stories of Jesus and the Christian text, and you have Mary birthing Jesus, and then his whole life unfolds and he dies and goes to God, and then there's nothing after that. It can't be that way because what actually happens is that he dies first with awakening Kundalini, and then he journeys healing and teaching and creating the new world, and then he is born. The new world is born, which is our new world today, 2023 years old. So that's where I am with understanding this process and this experience. It is happening for me daily. They are trying to bring about the manifestation of the new world. But it's almost like, a circle getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and I keep doing it over and over and over, and it gets closer and closer and closer until, boom, bingo, it's here. And so it's exciting, but it's also redundantly repetitive, and and I just keep asking God, am I doing the right thing? And is yes you are. And I'm like, okay, well, Jesus comes and gives me reassurance that he's with me, that he's here, and I'm doing the right thing, but yet we're not manifesting the new world yet. So it's just a learning process for me. It's an experience I hope to forget. I just want to get to the good stuff, I want everyone to be happy and healed and living a beautiful and bountiful life, and yet there's still all of this turmoil. And the other day I was told God's not done yet, and I'm like, well, then why are we repeating the same thing, over and over and over? And it's not in my hands to control. I have had to let go of control and just follow my guidance as best as I can in order to bring about God's action in this world. So a little different perspective of what is going on in the Christian text, as well as in my personal experience of Awakened Kundalini. Every once in a while, I am still doing the Merkaba spin. They move me in different times and places. I was gone for a while. You didn't see any new videos. I was at a very high dimension, and I was talking with God, and and they were explaining some things, but then they put me back here in order to share a little bit more with all of you. So I'm sure you have questions. Feel free to email me if you choose, or wait and see what happens. As always, I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a very beautiful day.